And I'd like to welcome you all to our Tuesday 1:30 p.m. session today. And we'll be covering herbs and spices, the differences between them, and some fun facts and information. So thank you all so much for attending. I hope you enjoy and learn something new. The WildTech DC Senior iPad program, its owners and presenters offer technical assistance, virtual health, well-being information designed for educational purposes only. You should not rely on any information in any applications or topics made by WildTech, including but not limited to mobile device applications and any social media pages maintained by WildTech, its owners or presenters as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or legal advice. Thank you so much for letting me read the disclaimer. If you cannot see me, hear me, or see the screen, please let me know in the chat and I'd appreciate that, amongst any other comments or questions as well. Make sure your TVs and cell phones are silenced to the best of your ability to give others, and most importantly, yourself, the most immersive experience. And I always recommend that you have some kind of notes next to you so you can record some information down and review it for later, okay? To keep our meetings organized and avoid talking over each other, have some kind of etiquette, I just ask that you use the raise hand feature. You can find the raise hand button in the toolbar at either during or at the end of each session. We have the opportunity to ask questions using this feature. So again, I want everyone in Zoom to please raise their hand. You can tap more at the top right of Zoom, and then you can tap raise hand. So I want everyone in Zoom to please raise their hand. If you enjoyed learning more about Color TV Day, if you're having a great Tuesday, if you're wishing everyone a wonderful rest of their week or good afternoon, or just saying hi, you're ready to learn more about herbs and spices, etc. So again, I want everyone in Zoom to please raise their hand. And I really appreciate that. We have 8 hands so far. Let's see if we can maybe get to 10. Thank you, Gracie. Appreciate that. Number 10, I love it. Thank you so much. And again, if you ever have a question, a comment, a concern, a reaction, etc., anything of that nature, you can raise your hand in Zoom by utilizing this feature. You can lower your hand once you've been called on to hit lower at the bottom. And it says your hand is raised, and it says lower. So again, don't forget to lower your hand once you've been called on, so we can make sure that everyone is acknowledged for any questions or comments as much as we can, okay? So again, let's all lower our hands, please. Again, at the bottom, should say your hand is raised, and it says lower. So again, don't forget to lower your hand once you've been called on, okay? And if you want to communicate non-verbally, the chat is a great way to share a greeting, send a photo, ask a question, send your congrats, send your encouragement, anything of that nature. You can tap more at the top right of Zoom. So if I go to Zoom myself, if I go to Zoom myself and then I hit more and then I hit chat. So again, more than chat at the bottom, it says tap here to chat. And you're going to tap on that area, the keyboard will come up, and then you can share any kind of message. You can just have emojis, or you can just have text if you want. I'm doing text and emojis. Today is Color TV Day, so there goes some TVs. Lots of fun. And make sure you utilize the chat again when you get on Zoom. It's nice just to say hi, even if it's like just one other person on or a couple other folks on. You may never know whose day you might make. So I want everyone in Zoom to please utilize the chat. Again, you tap more at the top right of your screen, and then you are going to hit chat. At the bottom, again, it says tap here to chat, and you type in any kind of message that you would like. So something as simple as a hi with a smiley face, or hello, or again, anything you'd like to share. You can even send a photo in the Zoom chat by hitting the plus sign, and then you can hit photo, and then you can add any photo from your Photos app. So this is from the background that we did last Friday, and I just shared it into the chat. So if you want to save that image to your Photos app, you can hold it with your finger, and then you'll see this drop-down menu appear, and then you can save the image. You can reply to any message, not just an image. If you'd like, literally reply to them by holding it and by hitting reply. So it's many, many different options and things that you can utilize in the Zoom chat. You can just say some words or text, anything you like to share, an image, anything you like to share, please utilize the chat. If you could also share what are you eating today in the chat, I would really appreciate that. I'm not eating this right now, but over the weekend I cooked for some friends. So I made some pancakes, some salmon cakes, some grits, and hmm, what else did I make that day? It was quite a bit, but it was a nice meal, and certainly going to enjoy whatever I plan to make this evening. So if you could share what you may be having for lunch or you had for breakfast, anything of that nature, please also share that in the chat. And I would love to shout them out throughout the session today. But thank you for the have a great days and happy days and hellos, everyone. I really appreciate that. Again, if you could share what you are eating today or yesterday or just in general, we'd love to hear it and see it in the chat. Thank you, Geraldine, for sharing. That sounds wonderful. I'm a sucker for vegetable soup, so I would love to try some. Thank you. So yes, please share again what you're eating in the chat, any questions, any comments. I'm able to look at the chat throughout the session, so please keep that in mind. And again, we're going to learn something new today. So I'm going to enjoy, and we're going to enjoy our session today. So thank you so much for coming on. Again, we're talking about herbs and spices. What's the difference? A lot of folks may use these terms interchangeably. So again, we're going to get to the bottom of this. So again, as we know, herbs and spices are used to contribute to our food's flavor. We may even use these terms interchangeably, as I just said. However, there is a key difference between them. And one very simple way to remember this is alliteration. So an herb comes from the higher parts of a plant. So herb, higher, HH, right? And those are generally the leaves and stems of the plant. As spice, again, starts with S, comes from several parts of a plant. So the bark, the nuts, the roots, the seeds. So again, that's a very, very easy. And I did not realize that until doing the research for this presentation, that yes, they are different. And in turn, an herb and a spice can come from the same plant. I'm having a hard time remembering the specific plant, but it can an herb and a spice can come from the same part of the plant. It just depends on what part of the plant that comes from, either the higher part, which is an herb, or the other parts or several other parts. Those are spices. Okay, herb higher, spice several. Okay, that's a great way to keep in mind and remember that. Generally, you'll want to use herbs that are fresh. When used as garnishes, chopped or whole herbs provide style, of course, a little flair to your meals, and crisp, subtle flavor. So, yep, very subtle, but very fresh and crisp. That's what I think of herbs. So I always kind of knew that in a way, but it's just good to see it on paper. They're very subtle, but very crisp and fresh flavors. Some popular herbs include basil, mint, parsley, rosemary, sage, and thyme. I'll be asking this at the end, but again, please share maybe your favorite herbs or your favorite spices, or again, any comments in our session. I particularly love rosemary and sage. I love seasoning or marinating different meats with those different herbs, but also just placing it like on top of a salad, or putting it on a meal and just putting a fresh flair on the top of it. Spices, on the other hand, they are commonly dried or ground, right? So you can use them whole, like if you actually have the whole spice, toasting whole spices over a medium heat until fragrant. That's how you can bring their flavors out. Like cinnamon, just toasting cinnamon in the pan, maybe some star anise, some cumin as shown. Toasting whole spices over heat can bring out those different flavors of those different spices. And spices often offer a stronger flavor than herbs. So if you want something a little stronger for flavor and things of that nature, you can utilize a spice. Some of these include cinnamon, as stated, cumin, nutmeg, paprika, and turmeric. So again, we have the herbs. Love these little gifts of the different ones: basil, mint, parsley, rosemary, sage, and thyme. We also have some popular spices as cinnamon, cumin, nutmeg, paprika, and turmeric. So again, I love how we're able to distinct between the two. And if you want something more subtle, go with the herb, like as a garnish. If you want something a little more stronger, definitely for different meats and salads and things of that nature, spices will be your friend. So again, either way, utilize both, and you will, you won't miss the salt as much in a way. I love it, utilizing these things, and still a little salt is always a little necessary, but just being able to replace that with herbs and spices can be a good change, especially for taste and just something different. So I hope you get to utilize either some more herbs or more spices or more of both as a result of this session today. So again, we're going to be talking about herbs and spices, the differences between them. So I think this video kind of generally talks about what we have, but just in a more visual format. So herbs versus spices, aren't they the same? And that question is thought and said by many. So this video does a good job of talking about the differences between the two. So I hope you enjoy and learn something new. Yep. Is there any plants that's both an herb and a spice? So yes, there are a few rare plants that give us both herbs and spices. Yep, cilantro and coriander. That's the two. I think I remember cilantro, but it was the other item that was escaping me. So cilantro and coriander. Look at that. Both come from the same plant. Isn't that interesting? Yep, herbs are like the leaves and the stems, and the spices are every other part of the plant. So herb higher, spice several. It's a great way to remember. Again, I like that tip. Fresh herbs. Again, I know in the previous slide they said herbs had a little bit more flavor, but fresh herbs have a little bit more flavor than the dried varieties of the spices. So if you get a chance to use the whole spice versus the ground version that you get from the store, it will have a higher flavor or more flavor than fresh herbs. If you use whole spices, if you use the ground spices, it may be about the same or a little less than fresh herbs. So that's a great point that the video makes. Yeah, use a coffee grinder. That's one way to grind up spices. I suggest a mortar and pestle as well. Does a great job, not just for spices, but for many other things as well. So yeah, use a coffee grinder or a mortar and pestle to really grind up and break down those different spices. So I hope you all enjoyed and learned something new from the video. Specifically, if you did not know that a herb and a spice can come from the same plant, please raise your hand, or if you just learned something new, again, about herbs and spices, if you didn't know that there was a difference between the two, please raise your hand in Zoom. I wish I could raise my own hand, because again, before this session, I thought, herbs and spices were not the same thing, but people just use them interchangeably. So I never really thought about a difference between the two. So, you could definitely share that with others, and they'll probably be as shocked as I was when I learned and researched again for this presentation. So thank you, appreciate it. I see we have about 6 hands up. So I really appreciate that, you all. You can hit lower at the bottom to lower your hands. Thank you so much. Next up, we're gonna do some more history and the geography of herbs and spices. So where does each herb and spice come from? I love this video. Again, it has a lot of history and geography. So again, I know, again, rewatching it, I'll learn something new yet again, and I hope you all do the same as well. So the geography of herbs and spices, where do they come
Let's
from?
face it, spices are the best part about eating food. They're what go into sauces, seasonings, and directly onto our meals to make us want to eat. The fact that spices are great has been known for millennia now, and has at certain points in history led to tremendous changes in society, economics, and people. After all, Columbus was trying to find a new route to the East Indies to access the spice trade when he accidentally stumbled upon America. That means everything afterwards, the colonization, the destruction of the indigenous population, and even the Atlantic slave trade were all inadvertently caused by the search for spices. Before that, caravans would cross deserts and seas to transport spices from one end of the known world to another. Not only did this drive the exchange of goods and currency, but created cultural interaction and diffusion, leading to the spread of ideas, religions, and technology across the world. Despite the huge role spices have played in human history, few people know about the vital role geography plays in both the growing and usage of spices in foods. Perhaps the most important thing to understand about them is that spices are defenses. Let me explain. So the same way predation of smaller animals by larger ones leads to certain animals developing some crazy defenses, plants are eaten by animals in what's called herbivory, which can lead to plants developing similar defenses over time. Some examples of this include plants growing thorns, high off the ground, and thick skins like bark. But by far the most common form of defense plants use are chemical defenses, usually by storing up a large amount of toxic chemicals in their bodies, so that when eaten by herbivores, it either kills them or at least injures them enough so that they never eat that plant again. So the same way poison dart frogs accumulate poison on their skin to deter predators from eating them, plants will store poisons in their bodies or fruits to deter herbivores. These poisons are our spices. For bigger animals like humans, this poison just tastes interesting or different, because we have a much higher tolerance than the smaller organisms that these chemicals target. By now you might be asking, but they're still toxins, right? So why do we enjoy eating them at all? The answer to this is actually found in the single greatest plant predator on Earth, decomposers. More specifically, bacteria and fungus. Most often, the toxins stored in the bodies of plants are to prevent the growth of these decomposers inside the body of the plant. If it weren't for these chemicals, decomposers could get in and, well, decompose things, killing the plant in the process. So now, think about humans a few thousand years ago. They'd hunt and catch animals, and sometimes massive ones, whose meat would sustain tribes for days or even weeks. But they couldn't simply put their leftovers in the fridge. Without that convenience, bacteria and fungus like mold would quickly grow and make any leftover food rancid. If only there was a chemical designed to kill bacteria and fungus that was so abundant you could metaphorically say it grows on trees. Oh wait, here's this weird red thing that kind of makes my tongue tingle when I eat it, but it does exactly that. So yeah, spices were used to kill any bacteria and such growing on our food in order to prolong the window in which it could be eaten. They'd also help mask any bad flavor the meat had acquired due to rot. This made spices extremely valuable. If you wanted to survive, you had to be able to stomach these toxins. Therefore, whoever was more resilient to the toxins we called spices were more capable of surviving in times of scarce food options. Basically, whoever could handle spicier foods could eat the safest food. In this way, evolution selected towards us not only being spice tolerant, but actually for us to enjoy the flavors of spice, because it meant we were eating safe food. But the use of spice didn't happen evenly across all human populations. If you think about it, we put food in refrigerators to make them colder so that they last longer. This has to do with the metabolism rates of bacteria and such, as metabolisms occur at faster rates in warmer temperatures, meaning bacteria can eat and reproduce faster and cause even more damage. Therefore, putting food in a warm environment will shorten the amount of time that it's safe to eat. What this results in is food rotting faster in areas that experience warmer climates, like the tropics. To combat this, a greater quantity and diversity of spices are typically used in tropical and subtropical places to counteract the higher rates of bacterial growth. In colder places like the temperate regions, the opposite is true. Sometimes the temperature here can fall below freezing, and food will stay good if you just leave it outside, meaning there's less of a need to season it with spices. It also just so happens that it gets cold right around the same time food gets sparse, and preservation becomes a necessity. Think, in the summer, food is usually plentiful, and therefore there's no real need to preserve food because you can always find more. But in the winter, animals take refuge and all the plants lose their foliage and fruits, so the food people can find has to last longer. What I'm getting at is the only time food needs to be preserved in the temperate areas, the environment does it for us. But in the tropical regions, the dry season will come to make food scarce, but high temperatures persist, making spicing food necessary. This explains why cuisine in, let's say, Britain is disgusting, but food in, let's say, India is amazing. This is also why so many Europeans valued spices so much and sailed everywhere in the world looking for trade routes to access these spices. On the biological side of this, because bacteria and fungi grow faster in warmer conditions, plants around the equator are more likely to store up chemical defenses to dissuade them as well. So not only did people who lived in the tropics have a greater need for spices, they also had a greater and more diverse arsenal of spices to choose from. This has led certain areas on the globe to develop abundant natural spices. Because of this, instead of doing what I did with fruits and go through each fruit individually, I decided this time to go through the hot spots and then catch any spices that don't belong to a certain hotspot at the end. The first important concentration is to be found in India and the rest of Southeast Asia. This area stretches from the subtropical into the tropical and once hosted the largest and oldest rainforest on the planet. Southern India is where basil, turmeric, and black pepper, the most common pepper we use today, comes from. Curry also originated here, but that's actually a combination of several different spices, not just one plant. Further south, it's thought that cinnamon first began in Sri Lanka. To the east, we have where ginger and the licorice plant got their start. And yeah, before you ask, it's the root of the licorice plant that we used to flavor licorice candy. Lastly, for this region, we maybe have the most common spice currently being used in the world: sugar. A lot of people might disagree with this, but if you think about it, it's just another plant-derived substance we use to flavor our food, which is exactly what every other spice is too. Whether or not you consider it a spice though, sugarcane, the plant responsible for 80% of our sugar production, is thought to have come from this region as well. Nearby are what's called the Maluku or Moluccas Islands in Indonesia. However, they used to have a much simpler name, the Spice Islands. From these few small islands, cloves, mace, and nutmeg originated. It was these islands in particular that drove the Portuguese and later the Dutch into the East Indies, and it was a trade route to these islands that Columbus was looking for when he set sail in 1492. Then, on the other side of the world, Mexico was also a hub of maybe a lot of people's favorites. It was here that both paprika and vanilla originated. What's strange is that traces of vanillin, the compound that gives vanilla its flavor, has been found in old world tombs dating back thousands of years. Archaeologists found this substance coating the jugs within an untouched Bronze Age tomb in Megiddo, Israel. This indicates there might have been some exchange between the Americas and the old world almost 4,000 years ago. Also, they were using vanilla to flavor their olive oil, which, I don't know, just doesn't sound good. If that isn't enough though, it was also here that the cacao tree, what we use to make chocolate, was also first domesticated, most likely by the Olmec or Mokaya people, though the plant itself likely originated further south in the Amazon region. This plant was so prized that its beans were used as currency throughout several different Mesoamerican cultures. What's funny is that initially this plant wasn't desired for its beans, which is the part we now use to make chocolate, but instead it was the sweet pulp of the plant that was highly valued because it would be fermented and used to make alcohol. Iran is actually where a lot of spices are grown today, as its hot and arid climate replicate those found in places like the Mediterranean and Mexico very well. As for what spices originated here, both cilantro/coriander, yeah, they're the same thing, and cumin came from this area. But I saved the most important herb and spice hotspot for last: the Mediterranean region. To start, the most common type of bay leaf comes from this region, though different types can be found across the world. Chamomile also came from this region. Mostly used for tea now, it got its name in English via French, via Latin, via the Greek word chamaemelon, meaning earth apple. Fennel plants aren't too popular, but they're one of the main ingredients in making absinthe. The Greek word for fennel is marathos, and marathon literally translates into field of fennel. So the Greek city of Marathon was originally just built in a field of fennel and named accordingly. Then a battle between the Greeks and Persians happened here, and someone had to run 26 miles to Athens to tell them about it, and that's how we ended up with the marathon race. Lavender also came from the Mediterranean region, which for the longest time went by the Greek name nard, so good call switching it to lavender. Mint has spread across the world, but it's thought to have originated here as well, though it grows best in wetter climates. Primarily, mint is grown near other, more important plants, so its pungent smell keeps other pests away. It's basically only humans that actually like the smell and taste of mint, which is weird because mint is almost exclusively used because we think it smells good. Breath mints, toothpaste, mouthwash, and chewing gum all use the aroma of this leaf, which only exists to keep herbivores from eating it with its awful smell. Actually, I guess that does make sense, because if your breath smells like something that kills bacteria, then your mouth must not have any bacteria, and therefore must be clean. Anyway, mustard plants also got their start in this region. While many might be thinking of the condiment mustard, which is made from the seeds of mustard plants, mustard as a family includes the genus Brassica, which also includes turnips, cabbage, collard greens, kale, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and canola plants. Yeah, mustards are more important than people realize. Oregano, on the other hand, is known to have originated specifically in Greece, and its name comes from the Greek words oros, meaning mountain, and ganos, meaning joy, to make joy of the mountains, which is where wild oregano first grew. Saffron is one of the most expensive spices by weight, and that's because the part we use as a spice comes from the elongated stigmas, this part of the saffron flower, which usually only yield a couple per flower. They were specially bred on the island of Crete during the Bronze Age to be like this. From here, it spread to become popular in foods and medicines. While rosemary, sage, and thyme also come from this general region. They're pretty regular spices. I couldn't find anything cool or specific to say about them though. And that wraps up all the major hotspots for spices. Next, we have the spices that appeared all on their own. Allspice, which has been described as sort of tasting like cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves all together, is also known by another name, Jamaican pimenta. So yeah, no surprise, allspice got its start on the island of Jamaica in the Caribbean. Cayenne peppers are the classic red pepper most people probably think about when thinking of spicy peppers. These actually come from the French Guiana in South America, specifically from the Cayenne region. Funny how that worked out. The name cayenne originally comes from the native Tupi word guiña, which also just means pepper, so cayenne pepper literally translates into pepper pepper. Garlic, in my opinion, is just the best, and comes from Central Asia, where Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and the Chinese Tianshan Mountains meet. Then we have jasmine, which is actually a genus containing over 200 individual species. Being so numerous, it's hard to track just exactly where they started, but it's thought that southern China is where they came from. Sassafras is really the only spice I have on this list that comes from a more temperate, wet climate, originating in the east coast of North America, roughly from Ontario, Canada to Florida in the United States. It's the root of this tree that was used to flavor root beer, hence the name root beer. And lastly, we have the spice melange, which we all know is native to and only grows on the desert planet of Arrakis. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, maybe consider liking and subscribing. If you'd like to—
Wow, I hope you all enjoyed that video. And just as I said in the chat, you can find spices originating from anywhere in the world. So I thought it was quite interesting. And it's good to know where things come from. And I love the origins of the words, like, cayenne pepper being pepper, pepper. Isn't that entertaining, right? So I hope you all enjoyed and learned something new about the geography of herbs and spices. If you learned about a new spice, or if you learned where your favorite spice came from in this video, I try to put some in the chat as much as I could. Please raise your hand in Zoom. Again, if you learned something new about the geography of herbs and spices, if you learned where your favorite spice came from today, etc., please raise your hand in Zoom. Gracie said, mint grows in your yards and flower beds. This yard smells minty. Thank you so much for that. I wish I had some mint near any of these spices. It's just so interesting. Spices were meant to preserve food and to make the critters and insects and anything, and stay away from that food, which again is quite interesting to know the history and why certain areas of the world love spices, and some or love and use spices, but some that just don't use it that much, and use all solid reasons why in the video. So Thank you all so much for watching. You all can hit lower at the bottom to lower your hand. Thank you so much. Our next video is, again, just some information on how to use herbs and spices like a pro, and just some general tips that I hope are useful for you all as well. So lots of, some information today that could definitely help you in your herb and spices journey. And I hope you learned something new.
I like to think of cooking as an art, and spices are one tool that we can use to create new masterpieces in the dishes we prepare. So today we're going to chat about how we can harness the power of spices to elevate our cooking to greater heights. If you don't know how to store and use spices properly, you could be missing out on all of their amazing flavors and health benefits. So in today's video, we're going to explore 3 essential steps when it comes to making the most out of our herbs and spices. We're going to chat about how to purchase them wisely, store them appropriately, and use them skillfully to maximize their freshness and nutrition, all while making dishes with bold and dynamic flavors. We've also created a free article and a free downloadable PDF. I'm going to link those for you below, but for now, just sit back and relax, and let's learn all about how to use spices like a pro. When it comes to buying our spices, quality and freshness are everything. So it really matters where we're buying our spices, what in particular we're buying, and how much of it we're buying. When it comes to where to buy, in my opinion, I think the fresher the better. And this is why I usually like to hit up our local Asian supermarket. The reason being they're usually super busy, so I know this means they're also restocking their shelves frequently with fresh spices. They also just have like a massive selection of spices to choose from. It feels like being a kid in a candy store. And if you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to begin, we'll chat in 2 seconds about which spices you might want to consider buying. But it can also be a fun exercise. Robin and I do this sometimes where we'll just go to the grocery store and we'll pick up a new spice that we haven't tried before and find a way to experiment with it that week. When it comes to which spices to buy, that's entirely up to you, but there are certain classics that I keep defaulting to. And if you want to make any of our Pickle Limes recipes, there's certain spices we just use on repeat. So excluding salt and pepper, in order from what we use most often to kind of lesser often, is first up ground cinnamon, followed by onion powder, paprika powder, garlic powder, cumin, turmeric, oregano, coriander, and curry powder. So if you're not sure where to start, these are a safe bet. And then when it comes to something like black pepper, cumin, and coriander, you might wonder if getting the whole seeds or the ground version is better. They each have their pros and cons. The ground spices are super convenient, but they do have a shorter shelf life, whereas whole spices have a longer shelf life, and they can be enjoyed whole or ground up. And if you do grind it up just before using it, you're going to be supercharging the flavor in your dish. So in my opinion, purchase both if you can. Otherwise, go for the ground spices if you're looking for convenience, and whole spices if you're looking for versatility. And then when it comes to how much to buy, now this is something we're going to chat more about in a little bit, but spices and herbs tend to lose their nutrition and flavor potency over time. So it's better to buy in smaller amounts and more frequently, especially if it's a spice that you're not using that often. And before you purchase anything, always check the expiration on the back of the packaging. Just make sure you're not buying anything that's going to expire within the next year. Storing spices correctly is incredibly important when it comes to preserving their nutritional value and taste. So let's explore that in a little bit more detail. We all know by now that fruits and vegetables are incredible sources of antioxidants that help protect our bodies from damage, in turn reducing the risk of certain diseases. Well, spices and herbs also contain potent antioxidants and in pretty high concentrations. So when looking at the antioxidant content of a particular food, normally you look at something that's called its ORAC value. Essentially, all you need to know is that the higher the ORAC value is, the more antioxidants that food has. So if we were to put things into perspective, blueberries, which are often hailed as a superfood for their antioxidant content, these have an ORAC value that's just shy of 4,700 per 100 grams. Whereas dried basil has an ORAC value that's 61,000. That's 13 times as much. Then turmeric and cinnamon have nearly double that amount. Oregano has an ORAC value of 175,000, only to be topped by ground cloves. And naturally, no one is having a 100-gram portion of these spices in one sitting. That would be absurd. We're just adding little sprinkles here and there. But I think what I'm trying to share is that these values add up, especially if you're enjoying these herbs and spices with every single meal. So be generous with that ground cinnamon that's in your porridge. Enjoy the turmeric in your smoothies. Go wild with the basil and oregano in your pastas. You're going to be loading up on some wicked antioxidants. So it's cool to know that spices and herbs are a great source of antioxidants, but what does it have to do with storing them? Well, pretty much everything, actually. You see, antioxidants are easily broken down when they're exposed to air, light, and moisture. And similarly, there are these volatile oils that are in our herbs and spices, and these are what contribute to their incredible flavor and aroma, but these also break down when exposed to the same elements. So if we're not storing our spices and herbs properly, we're not only losing in their nutritional value, but we're also losing their flavor potency. So what do we do about it? Essentially, store them properly. It's best to store them in well-sealed, airtight containers that are in a cool, dry place. So try to keep it away from windows, stoves, ovens, and dishwashers. When you've just used a spice, be sure to close the lid right away so moisture isn't getting in there from whatever it is that you're cooking. And always use clean and dry utensils when measuring spices. Just remember that adding moisture to our spices can cause them to spoil and go bad faster. Lastly, I'd recommend labeling your containers with either the date that you bought your spice or the expiration date, just so you're keeping track of its freshness. As a general rule of thumb, whole spices are the most fresh in the first year, whereas ground spices and dried herbs are the most fresh in the first 6 months, but both can last up to a couple of years at least, as long as they're stored properly. Another way that you can tell that your spices are getting old and that it's time to replace them is just by looking at them. So I've got 2 different kinds of chives here. This one is freshly purchased, and you can see from the color that it's got this beautiful green hue to it, and it smells delicious. Whereas these chives—
Just look at these 2 different jars of the same spice. Like, you can just immediately see the difference between the 2. So I think that's just quite astounding. Okay.
or the expiration date, just so you're keeping track of its freshness. As a general rule of thumb, whole spices are the most fresh in the first year, whereas ground spices and dried herbs are the most fresh in the first 6 months, but both can last up to a couple of years at least, as long as they're stored properly. Another way that you can tell that your spices are getting old and that it's time to replace them is just by looking at them. So I've got 2 different kinds of chives here. This one is freshly purchased, and you can see from the color that it's got this beautiful green hue to it, and it smells delicious, whereas these chives have been sitting in our pantry for too long. They've kind of turned this grayish color, and adding this to a dish is not going to be doing it any favors. So it's time to swap these ones out. All right, now we can delve into the exciting part, which is how to use our spices to elevate our dishes. If you're new to using spices at first, I'd say just try learning from recipes that you trust. Act a little bit like a student. Pay attention to what's being used, how much of that spice is being used. I think that's sometimes where some of the confusion comes from. Do I add 1/4 teaspoon, a tablespoon? You'll start to notice things like ground cloves, nutmeg, just a little pinch is good. Oregano, cinnamon, you can add a whole lot more than that. Essentially, by following recipes, you'll start to notice certain patterns in how much and what is being used. From there, it can help to familiarize yourself with certain spice combinations in certain cuisines. Like, for example, Mexican-inspired dishes commonly use spices like cumin, paprika, chili, and oregano, while Indian-inspired dishes incorporate warm spices, things like turmeric and ginger, as well as spice blends like curry powder and garam masala. Sticking to these tried and tested spice combinations is going to make sure that your dishes are tasting deliciously exquisite. And so now that we know which spices to use, the next question kind of becomes, well, when do I use it? When do I add it into a dish? So let's explore that a little bit, starting first with whole spices. So these take a little bit longer to cook, a little longer to release their flavor into a dish, so naturally you'll want to add them earlier on in the cooking process. It's also important to know about something called blooming, which is essentially where we cook our spices first, a little bit of oil or fat. It helps to extract the fat-soluble flavor compounds that are in the spices. I kind of like to think of it as waking up spices that were previously asleep. So when it comes to whole spices, if you're going to be using them, again, you're adding it earlier on, cooking it for a minute or 2, ideally in an oil or a fat, until they start to pop and become fragrant. At this point, we can add in things like onion and garlic, cooking those until they're translucent or gold before adding in the ground spices. Ground spices have a very high surface area. They will burn, so you don't want to cook those for very long at all. So usually you want to stir quite vigorously, toasting them for 30 to 60 seconds just to wake them up before adding in any other remaining ingredients or liquids. And you've heard me say this in previous recipe videos, but just don't add your liquids too soon. Toasting your spices, even if it's just for a few seconds, can make a world of flavor difference. But all in all, I feel like cooking is like an art. It requires creativity, skill, and a passion for the craft. So welcome to the world of spices. Enjoy the process, make mistakes, because that's how you learn and grow. And I hope that some of the tips that we shared in today's video makes you feel a little bit more confident when it comes to using spices. As a reminder, again, we do have a free downloadable PDF.
Yeah, so lots of great tips and tricks and tidbits with that video. Start off with the whole herbs and spices. And toast them or bloom them. Then you add your your onions, your mirepoix, whatever basics you want to add, and then that's when you add those ground herbs or spices at the end because they have more surface area. They tend to burn a little more easy, so you add them at the very end before you put in the main components of that dish. So I really enjoyed that part, and just know the technical term is called blooming. So blooming your herbs and spices can definitely make your food taste different, but better, as someone had said in the chat. So I like the idea about the storing, the air, the light, the moisture, making sure those things are being taken care of so your items can last as long as possible. And I like the tip that she gave. You buy less of that and a little more frequently because you don't want any of the things that you purchase to go bad and unused. So I think that was a great tip as well. If you learned something new from this video, if you want to utilize some of the things that they talked about in this video in your own cooking or in your own food, please raise your hand in Zoom. And if you learned something new about how to use herbs and spices, a suggestion that you're going to utilize from the video, whether it be storing or cooking or choosing different herbs and spices, please raise your hand in Zoom. Thank you. We have 8 hands so far. Really appreciate that. I just liked her calmness and the way that she explained these different concepts. So thank you. We had about 9-10 hands for that. So I really appreciate your participation. Our final video for the day, I know she talked about a guide. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but I just wanted to showcase this video on some interesting facts about herbs and spices. I hope you enjoy and learn something new.
Interesting facts about herbs and spices. Spices contain natural preservatives. If you season the food, it will last longer. Onion, chives and garlic are good against viruses and bacteria. Raw ginger and fresh parsley makes the salad fresh and tasty. Cloves, ginger, cardamom and cinnamon have warming properties. For your dressing you can use basil, parsley, rosemary, cumin and thyme. Garlic and cayenne are warming and relieve good in the event of a cold. Spices speed up your digestion. When you eat spicy food, your saliva secretion increases, and this speeds up digestion. Peppermint oil promotes hair growth medication. Chili peppers evolved to be spicy because heat repels most animals except for birds, which are responsible for spreading their seeds. Turmeric powder has been surprisingly effective against Alzheimer's symptoms in multiple studies. Red peppers are usually rich in vitamin C, and that paprika made from them retains more vitamin C by weight than even lemon juice. Paprika is also rich in other antioxidants.
I love that fact. I never thought of red peppers and vitamin C like together. You know what I'm saying? So that's really interesting. I love me some red peppers, so I like that. Paprika has more vitamin C by weight than even lemon juice. which is quite interesting. So again, two facts that I just wanted to highlight.
Spices you use in especially pastries prevent gases in the stomach. This includes anise and cumin. Cinnamon can prevent mold growth. Scientists have created cinnamon-based packaging that can prevent mold in bread and in other baked goods. Catnip is 10 times more effective at repelling mosquitoes than DEET, the compound used in most insect repellents. Licorice, star anise, and anise are completely botanically unrelated, despite smelling and tasting very similar. Strong spices protect against parasites and bacteria. India uses strong curry which kills bacteria that otherwise propagate easily in the heat. Anise, cumin, and fennel fit well as bread spices. They also counteract gases in the stomach. Lavender or tree oil may cause breast growth gynecomastia in boys. Fennel is widely employed as a carminative to treat flatulence by encouraging the expulsion of intestinal gas. Counteract gases in connection with bee dishes make a ginger, cumin, and coriander. Ginger, thyme, oregano, and other green leafy spices are great for beans, sauces, peas, and dressings. Fresh spices and herbs contain mostly vitamins, minerals, and other beneficial goodies. Sprinkling them does not make the food just decorative but also gives a good taste. Anise, the herb that flavors traditional absinthe, Jägermeister, and ouzo, can relieve menstrual cramps. Saffron, vanilla, and cardamom are the 3 most expensive spices by weight.
Oh, wow. I knew about saffron, of course. That is the most expensive spice. But yeah, vanilla, kind of knew that, but the video kind of reaffirmed that. And then cardamom, that's very surprising. So good stuff so far.
Spices can improve and prevent various diseases. If you have high blood sugar, it can be stabilized with cinnamon. Cayenne pepper speeds up circulation in your body. Vanilla beans can only be pollinated within 12 hours of blooming, either by hand or a special variety of Mexican bee. Mixing cayenne pepper or chili peppers into underwater marine paint helps prevent barnacles from attaching to the boat hull. There are a number of spices that increase burning of calories, including cayenne and ginger. If you add saffron or turmeric to mayonnaise, you can no longer legally call it mayonnaise in the US. Lemon balm not only acts as a mild sedative and sleep aid but also boosts memory performance. Black pepper can stop bleeding and take away the soreness of a cut. Paprika is simply made from the dried and ground bell and chill pepper. Poppy seeds can cause drug tests to test positive for heroin.
That's not a lie. Certain spices, and if you take that test for whatever reason, it can come up as, one of those substances, which is, if you've heard like the poppy seed bagel in the news and, just hearing about that kind of, shows the reason why. So that's quite comedic and quite interesting that can occur.
Mint was strewn across floors in ancient Greece to cover the smell of the hard-packed soil, thus being known as the herb for hospitality. Pregnant women should not drink chamomile, as it may lead to miscarriage. Garlic, yogurt, and tea tree oil are all successful remedies for vaginal yeast infections. Taking fenugreek not only promotes lactation in nursing mothers, but also makes sweat and urine smell like maple syrup. Nutmeg trees actually produce 2 species, nutmeg and mace. Nutmeg is seed of the tree, while mace is the lacy reddish covering on the nutmeg seed. The flavor of nutmeg and mace is similar, but mace is slightly more pungent. Nutmeg was once so exotic that the Dutch traded the entire island of Manhattan to the British for the islands that grew nutmeg.
That is a very, very funny and interesting fact. Nutmeg was once so exotic that the Dutch traded the entire island of Manhattan to the British for the islands that grew nutmeg. Wow. Did not know that.
People sometimes mention masala as a seasoning. Masala translates to spice, so a masala blend can contain just about anything. Chaat masala is a tart spice blend while garam masala is a warm, earthly blend. Herbs are derived from a plant's leaves, whereas spices are sourced from the bark, buds and roots and seeds of a plant. You can have two different flavors and products from the same plant.
Cilantro and coriander. Don't forget the two C's. They come from the same plant. So it's always fun to think about and remember.
Chinese five spice is a traditional blend of 5 flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter and pungent. The combination of these flavors is thought to create balance. Ashayot seeds or annatto seeds are small triangular, red seeds. They have a subtle peppery flavor with a slight peppermint scent and a hint of bitterness. Mint has over 600 different varieties. The most commonly known ones are peppermint and spearmint. Mint leaf powder was used for teeth whitening in the Middle Ages. It was a tradition to use mint as air freshener in temples and home.
Wow.
In traditional Middle Eastern homes, mint tea is offered as welcome drink to guests. Peppercorns have been used to spice up foods for more than 4,000 years. As early as the 4th century BC, texts describe pepper being used as a seasoning for Indian feasts. Fresh herbs aid the digestion of food, especially fat, and help with the elimination of toxins from the body. Fresh herbs contain more antioxidants, substances that fight cancer and heart disease, than some fruit and vegetables. Rosemary is rich in antioxidants which help to maintain vitality and slow the aging process. Ancient records reveal recipes for herb-infused oils and creams in the tomb of legendary beauties such as Cleopatra. Dill is effective for the treatment of colic, gas and indigestion. Dill was once an important herb in witchcraft and a purported aphrodisiac. It has a distinctive sour flavor that makes it interesting and sometimes unexpected in cooking. The Romans believed that the consumption of mint would increase their intelligence, and the smell of mint in their houses was also a symbol of hospitality. Growing a pot of basil in the kitchen may smell good to us, but it doesn't to nuisance flies and mosquitoes who are repelled by the aroma. Mint leaves or oil deters ants, and so a few scattered leaves in your cupboards can prove a useful, natural solution. Chives have a beneficial effect on the circulatory system, lowering blood pressure.
Wow, that was quite interesting with all of those different facts about herbs and spices. I like these two right here. The growing a pot of basil in the kitchen may smell good to us, but it doesn't to flies and other insects. I thought that was quite
Growing a pot of basil in the kitchen may
Again, growing a pot of basil in the kitchen may repel nuisance flies and mosquitoes. I really like that tip. And then mint leaves or oil deters ants. And so a few scattered leaves in your cupboards can prove a useful natural solution. So those two tips I picked up, but all of that information about, its history, different herbs and spices history, and some fun facts. So I hope you all enjoyed and learned something new from this interesting facts about herbs and spices video. The last thing we're going to cover today is, again, that guide that the video previously had talked about. So again, how to use herbs and spices like a pro. So if you want to make your own spice and herb blends versus buying it in the store, This guide gives a great recipe on doing so. So you can learn how to make curry powder yourself, or five spice powder, or garam masala, or Italian seasoning, or za'atar seasoning. I love za'atar seasoning, or ras el hanout. I've never heard of that, but it's very interesting to know what it makes up some of maybe your favorite spice and herb blends. I didn't know that, I think it's meant to write star anise, but five spice powder. Did not realize what was actually the five spices in that powder. So it was good to learn. So if I tap on this link, it'll take me straight to that link that, or that guide that she talked about. So the world of herbs and spices plus a principal guide. So I'm just going to put this general article in the chat. I'm going to hit the share button right here at the top right, then hit copy. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste it in the chat for you all. So you can check this link out later on and save it for later if you want. So that is the actual guide of that we had talked about and watched. So it just talks more about some general information that was talked about in that video. And here at the bottom, again, once going through the summary, this is a PDF right here. It says get PDF guide to spices and herbs, get PDF. And it's right here. I can hit the share button, and of course I can copy it or save it to my files app. I can print it if I wanted to, but I'll save this to my my files app. So I am going to hit save once I get there. So now that guide is saved to my files app. And then if I, one second, I can also just put it into my browser. So either way, if you want to save the PDF from the link, from the article link, or if you just want to directly access it with the way that I had copied the link to that PDF, it also should take you to the direct link. So the first link is the actual article to and the guide. And this is the actual PDF of the guide that you can open yourself and be able to look at it whenever you need a guide. So look at this, spices and herbs, a world of flavors at our fingertips with some basics. So if you just ever wanted to learn what kind of flavor profile a certain spice is, and some suggestions, you can do so. So look at this. Onion powder, savory tints of onions to add to dishes such as bowls if you want a bold onion flavor. Turmeric, it's peppery and bitter. So you can infuse a yellow color in curries, savory breakfast, and even drinks. You can add turmeric too. Let's see. Curry powder, earthy and warm, deep in South Asian inspired dishes such as curry and dal. So it's just good to know the basics, and it has this information here as well. Beyond the basics, so here are some more complex spices. So they talked about mace. I've never heard of mace before. It's subtly sweet. You can be used in baked goods, drinks, and fall-inspired recipes. Saffron, of course, floor notes to desserts and rice dishes. Saffron and rice is like a match made in heaven. I love saffron in my rice. I've heard of sumac before, but never really paid it no mind. It's tangy with hints of citrus. You can use it in salads and wraps. I like that. Let's see, fenugreek. Never heard of that. I love dill. Dill and anything like any dips or salads or soups or ranches, they say, is really good. I love dill anything. So yeah, you can just see, and some suggestions like, bay leaves, right? Bay leaves can be intimidating to some. I certainly kind of didn't know what to use it for. I need to put it in soups and stuff, but rices and sauces and soups and stews. So we're all not going to know what each spice has use for. So I love having this guide so I can refer to it in case I have that spice and get some suggestions on where I want to use it. Here you go. It's 5 tips to spice and herbs things up. So again, that little guide on the combination for by dish for these spices and herbs. So any salads, thyme, sumac, parsley, paprika, cilantro, celery seed, etc. For stir fries, onion, ginger, garlic, fennel. For curries, you want mustard seeds, garam masala, curry leaves, cumin, etc. And then they also divided by cuisine. So Mediterranean dishes typically have basil, ginger, oregano, rosemary, sumac, etc. While Italian dishes also use basil, but they use nutmeg and and sage. So some, as you can see, cuisines use the same spices and herbs, but just in a different combination. So I really like that. Let's see how to bloom, how to grind whole spices, how to store carefully. So look, whole spices, freshest in the first year, lasts up to 3 to 4 years. Ground spices, of course, they're ground up, so they're not going to last as long. Dried herbs, fresh is in the first 6 months. Same thing for spice and herb blends. So they also give you a timeline as well to use those different items. So I like that. This guide gives you some tips and tricks and the general uses of these spices and herbs by dish, by cuisine, which I really like. And they also give you a guide on the different herbs and spices and some basics on what you can use those for. So again, just to see and maybe to try something new when you go to the grocery store and you go to that herbs and spices section, you know, it's so big sometimes those sections with those herbs and spices. So it can definitely get a little overwhelming on deciding which ones you want to try out. So by just looking at this guy, you can kind of highlight yourself which ones you want to try out. And that way, when you get the store, you can just, you know, pick those because you're already aware of some of the other ones that are on the shelf. So again, in the chat, I posted the link and the article to this guide, and hopefully you all use it and add some new and some different spices and herbs to your dishes. So other than that, I really appreciate you all coming on to our session today on herbs and spices, lots of great information and fun facts. So any general thoughts on the session today, we'd love to hear. But if you'd like to answer one of these questions before we end for today, please raise your hand in Zoom. What is one new fact that you learned today? Many for me. Love learning more about maybe something as simple as an herb and spice, but there's a lot more that goes into it. What is your favorite herb or spice? What new herbs or spices would you like to try as a result of this presentation? And from the information shared and from your background knowledge, of course, what do you think are the benefits of utilizing herbs and spices in your daily life? So again, what do you think are some benefits of us as humans and as people of utilizing and using herbs and spices in our cooking? So if you would like to answer one or more of these questions or just share your general thoughts on today's presentation, please raise your hand in Zoom and we love to hear from you. First up is Miss Dolores. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, good. Hope you enjoyed.
Yes. One of the new facts that I learned today where the different spices came from, but a lot of spices came from India and over in Sri Lanka, and I mean it was just amazing. And then the saffron, where it's just like the stems of a flower that they use to make delicious food. It was just amazing. It's yes, that's a new fact I learned today. Most of the spices where it came from. Yeah, it was really new. It was amazing though.
I definitely agree. I did not know where any of those came from. We just use it on our food. So it's just nice to see how something, again, as simple as an herb and spice can have a lot that goes into it and where it came from. So things happen for a reason. So I'm glad we get to take advantage of them in our daily lives. So I hope you get to use some new ones and take advantage of that article as well, Ms. Dolores.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for lowering your hand as well. I appreciate that. Next up is Geraldine. How are you doing today?
Hi, how you doing? Well, I learned
Good,
so
good.
much. There was so much information, and I learned a lot. And but one thing in particular I learned about is that vanilla is so expensive. The vanilla
Mm-hmm.
bean. I
And you,
didn't.
you
I mean,
remember why? You remember
no,
why that
no, I
that
don't
last that
remember.
last video? Because it only takes they only have 12 hours to either hand, I don't remember the specific word, but kind of basically hand pollinate it, or that
Yeah,
specific, it said, I think it said a specific Mexican bee or something.
yeah.
So
Specific
I didn't know
Mexican
that.
dish. Well,
I did not know
I
that.
remember that. I didn't know that either. I had no idea. Yeah. So so I learned about about the vanilla, and I learned
Hmm.
about the shelf life of the spices.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to read, I keep spices forever. You got to read, you got to read.
Me too, Geraldine. I'm laughing, but that goes for many folks because we don't think of spices and herbs having like expiration dates for real,
Right.
but
Yeah.
they do.
They do. Yeah, you got to be real careful about that. And then the last thing I want to say is the medicinal, the medical benefits of the spices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember them all, but I remember they said that garlic is good for colds. I forgot
Mm-hmm.
what else they said, but I remember that. And I know have a girlfriend who, as soon as she is about to catch a cold, all during COVID, she was eating whole garlic. And yeah, she was it. Yeah, she does.
That's not the only time I've heard that. I mean, garlic and I put in the chat, garlic and honey together, like they're really great for, just beating a cold. Garlic and honey together. It may sound a little nasty, a little gross, but
But
you
people
know,
believe that. They believe in that. So anyway, so that's all. But yeah, I learned a lot today. I learned a lot.
oh, thank you so much, Geraldine. And it was quite a bit of information. So literally all I did for this session was just search herbs and spices on YouTube, and you can rewatch those videos or watch some new videos. And just like with Miss Dolores, please make sure you take advantage of that article and that guide, Geraldine. So you can try some new herbs and
Okay, yeah,
spices,
I
okay?
can try. But yes, I will. Oh, thank you.
Oh, no problem, Geraldine. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much for
Thank you.
sharing.
Thank you.
Next up is Gracie. Hello, Gracie. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Alex?
Good. Thanks so much for your chats today. I loved reading those.
One thing I learned that the herb is above ground, the spices usually the stems are below ground. I never, maybe I knew that, but I still forgot it. And
I never knew it.
yeah, and so I've gotten like not tired, but kind of restless about eating, your traditional way of seasoning foods. So I went and bought a lot of different herbs, and that's what I was telling you about. How I use the curry powder. I put it in a little bit of everything, and it makes the taste different, So I'm learning how to enjoy traditional meals that I was kind of tiring of because I'm spicing them a little different now.
Yeah, spice it up, herb it up.
Cumin, all those, like a lot of the Indian herbs, they really do a good job on your salads and your meats and baking potatoes like the Yukon Golds, you cut them up, put them in there with a little olive oil and those different seasonings. I eat a plate of them, But that's it.
Thank you so much. Just like the lady in the video, she said, start off with stuff just like you said, with stuff or stuff you may feel like you're tired. Oh, I'm so tired of rice. Oh, I'm so tired of this. And we get like that because, humans, we get bored of stuff. So adding just different herbs and spices can really change how things taste.
You're right. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Thank you so much, Gracie. I really appreciate your comments as always. And hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you.
And our last hand up for now, again, anyone else would like to share, please raise your hand. But our last hand for now is Miss Thelma. Thanks so much for coming on. Would you like to answer one of these questions?
No, but I have to make a statement though, is that I've been dealing with herbs now for a year because I learned from a big mistake myself. I used to go buy racks of herbs all up in the jar. And
Mm,
but I was using, I just wasn't using them fast enough. And I got tired of going and getting them in the cabinet and they were hard. They were
mm.
turning hard. And I swear I must not be closing the top and come find I was storing the wrong place. So I bought me a spice chest. I bought it's a 4 foot, 4 level, 4 shelves. This is all for spices and all. And I was keeping it in there because besides the spices, I kept other containers and stuff like that, my sugar flour. But I've been doing that, and that's where I ran across garlic and vitamin C, or garlic and what's the other herb? I used to use dry lemon because that had vitamin C in it. God, I used to
Mm-hmm.
take that. But now they have the tablet for high blood pressure, and it keeps your pressure down. Or mine was always borderline, so it always stopped it from going up when I was doing something stupid, eating something stupid. And then the last thing is when everybody was in love with Mrs. Dash's. Miss Dash's dish, she takes the place off. So I went online and I said, what do Miss Dash's have in her recipe that I don't have? And it showed me all her 19 ingredients that's in it. So I've been making my own Miss Dash's ever since. And when they say put lemon in it, I said, well, I'm gonna get dry lemon. I bought a pack of lemon Kool-Aid. That's pure lemon. That's my lemon in it. And also, but the best thing, if you're gonna deal with these herbs, do a herb substitute. Get an herb substitute chart off the internet or wherever and get one. So, because when it comes to celery, you have to be careful because celery can't go with everything because it will cause salt or will damage the taste of your food because it's a little powerful little herb.
Oh yeah, so some
I
herbs can
learned
be
that
much
by
more
mistake of
powerful than
cooking.
others.
Just like mace. Mace is nothing but another, is a mild dose of what, to me, a nutmeg. I like nutmeg, but
Mm-hmm.
not do nice. And I
Mm-hmm.
was using it in the cake. It said mace cake. And I said, no, I ain't have no mace. It said use nutmeg. And I used the nutmeg and been added ever since. I've been added ever since. Yeah, but I love my herbs. But that book I have now is McCormick's herb book. And this book teach me how to cook like a chef. All the seasoning that they use in restaurant, I have in my book. I have my little book right here, my little Spices of the World cookbook. They've been with me since the 80s.
Oh, I know that's right, Miss Thelma. I'm so glad that you get to utilize the different resources and things of that nature that you've accumulated over the years. So I hope that the guide and article that we shared just enhances your knowledge and your use of the different herbs and spices. But keep in mind,
Yes.
like in the video, air, light, and moisture. Make sure that they're airtight, that you keep
Yeah.
them in a dark place, and that they're closed all the way, as you said. So
Yeah, they gotta
thank
be.
you. Thank you so much, Miss Thumb. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your comments and your suggestions as always. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And our last hand for the day before we end is Denise. Hi, Denise. How are you?
Oh, I'm good and you. You know what I don't
hmm
understand about that poppy seeds when they say you take your urine and then you have eaten some of them, it'll show up and I guess you'll fail your urine test if drug use or whatever. But can't they tell that it's poppy seeds?
Things are made up of similar chemicals. So, the detector, whatever's, I forgot the compound in poppy seed. If you literally just Google it and search it up, it'll like tell you the specifics on why that happens. But it's just the compounds and the chemicals that are found in those specific herbs and spices give off, or they show as that thing, but they're really not. But so it was that when I first saw that in the news, I just kind of laughed. I'm like, thank God that didn't
Uh-huh.
happen to me, right? But literally,
Yeah.
like, I just literally Google it and just kind of see the specific substance is, that's found in poppy seeds can be correlated to that. So that was just very funny and interesting when we did see that.
Yeah, because you could get in trouble if you're on your job and they testing you for drug testing and you probably ate something at home and you know you're not a drug user. And then they gonna pop up and say, oh, we found something You like what?
Right. But
Only way you would know if you tell them you ate the poppy seeds, but then they might say, well, we ain't sure about that. We gotta investigate this, and that's kind of
Oh
weird.
yeah, yeah, but that's what, new things or new things come, things come out, and you learn something. So they now,
Mhm.
people are more aware of it. So yes, if you Google it, or probably, you can search on YouTube, there are probably some videos or some
Yeah,
articles or websites that can show you more.
right. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for letting me share that.
No problem, Denise. You have a
Good day.
wonderful rest of your day, and thank you
You
so
too.
much for coming on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I see you have your hand up again, Miss Thelma. It is towards the end, so we have to end for the day, but thank you so much for sharing and for commenting. Next time, try to put it in the chat, and we'd love to read it in that way. But thank you all so much for attending our session on herbs and spices today. I hope you learned something new and get to take advantage of some more herbs or new herbs and spices that you either purchase or have in your home that you haven't tried. So thank you all so much for attending. I will see you all tomorrow at 1:30 for Module 2 on buttons and accessibility features. And we'll also be hearing from Jordan, and he'll be talking about the Libby app as well. Thank you all so much for attending. I hope you learned something new about herbs and spices and can utilize some of the facts and information in your daily life. Thank you so much for coming on. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. Stay safe and hydrated, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Alex. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank
Alex.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Y'all tune in. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thank
rest of your
you.
day.
Have a
See
good
you,
day.
Thank
Alex.
you.
Thank
Have
you.
a blessed one.
Have a blessed one, everybody. See you all
You
The
tomorrow.
same there. Okay.
Thank you.
God bless. God bless.
Bye.
Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for
You
coming
too.
on.